Hail them.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
Hailing frequencies open.
I don't know why I keep giving alien street food a chance. It's always such a gamble.
Captain, we're being hailed.
On screen.
Hello and welcome to another Hailing Frequencies Open podcast, where we continue to trek through the past and future of Star Trek. As always, I'm your host, Mike Jones, and recording with me today are three of our co-hosts. Coming all the way from New York, Damien.
Hi, Mike Jones.
Everyone's in New York. I don't know why I did that, because Ben is the only one not, and he's not here. You're probably in three different boroughs right now, though, right?
I am. I'm in Manhattan.
You're in Manhattan. And then Aaron isn't in the city anymore. Joining me from Long Island.
Strong Island. Yep,
Is
the
Aaron
island
Hadley.
paradise. It is I, Mike Jones, your faithful Starfleet companion, Aaron Hadley.
That's a resume credit right there.
She can't even
There you go. I
Special
can't.
skills,
get it out.
Starfleet companion.
I can't. I'm your Starfleet companion, like a Doctor Who companion, but less, but slightly less. I don't know, slightly bigger budget. Sometimes ?
Maybe.
Maybe possibly.
And then rounding out the host table is Lanita, and I have no idea where you live. Brooklyn?
Lies, you tell.
You're
I am
like
across
hip.
No, I'm a Bridge and Tunnel girl now.
Oh, you're a Jersey girl.
Moved to Jersey.
Where the gasoline comes from, if you live in the city.
Oh my God.
We
Yes, it
always
does.
cross
And
the tunnel or go across the bridge to get gas.
as you should, because it's cheaper next to the Holland
Exactly.
Tunnel.
Well, you know who I live with. We're going to go out of our way to get the cheapest gas possible. We now have a BJ's membership. You know why? Because
the gas is
they
so
give a
cheap.
teacher discount and the gas is so cheap.
So cheap. It's so good. Not sponsored. They
Not
could
sponsored.
though. If you're listening, BJ's, we'd love a sponsorship.
We love a BJ. Okay. We have a very special guest today joining us for the first time. He is the co-host of the amazing Spider Talk podcast, a much more professional podcast than us. And more importantly, husband to our very own Aaron. Welcome aboard, Mark.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I hope I can lend something somewhat useful to this conversation. Besides just being Aaron's eye candy.
I can't believe you didn't have any response to Mike Jones saying everyone loves a BJ before throwing over to introducing you. Everyone loves BJs.
Oh,
I didn't even catch
That's
that.
a great transition to Mark. I don't know. Anyway.
Mark's like, spot the lie.
There you go. So in our last episode, we were talking about the Star Trek Holo-Ween, and I don't think I ever explained that it's spelled like holodeck, not like Halloween. I don't just not know how to say Halloween. I was listening to the episode and I'm like, why am I saying it like that? Oh,
But what you need to point out is that it makes ween its own word.
Correct.
as
Which
well
is
it should
worse.
be.
As the King's English demands it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and we realized in recording that episode that we don't know anything about comic books. And we happen to know someone who knows a lot about them. Mark, do you want to tell us a little bit about your podcast and your chase experience?
Oh, well, absolutely. So we started the amazing Spider Talk, myself and my co-host, Dapper Dan Gavazdan. We have our Marvel alliteration names. 10 years ago, April 2013. It is somewhat weekly show. We review the new episodes. We do a historical overview. We have creators from past and present on to do interviews about working on all things Spider-Man. We primarily focus on the comics, but we also talk a lot about the movies, the films, animation, other pop cultureisms, whatever. I mean, we have the rock comic record album we've talked about. I mean, a little bit of everything. So I wrote a book about Spider-Man, 100 Things Spider-Man fans should know and do before they die. Erin was my copy editor. She allegedly knows everything about Spider-Man now. I'm sure she committed it to memory.
Absolutely, darling.
And the podcast was actually born out of a blog that I had started a few years before the podcast started about my quest to collect every issue of the Amazing Spider-Man comics. I got through the entire series going back to 1963. I finished that collection in about 2014. And just very recently, through some gentle coercion, I purchased Amazing Fantasy 15, which is the very, very, very first appearance of Spider-Man.
Wow.
So, our
I'm
son
not going
will
to
not,
ask how much that cost.
I would say our son won't be going to college now, but
He
now
will
I have
not.
all the Spider-Man, and that's what really matters in all this. So, we talk Spider-Man, we spend bad money on Spider-Man, and I'm here to talk about Star Trek comics, about Holo-Ween. So let's do it.
I was desperate to find a Spider-Man Star Trek crossover because they've done crossovers in the past. The Star Trek comics have a sordid history. The first ones were Gold Key comics that were done by artists who had never seen the show and were working off of publicity stills. And they read like something that's, you can tell that they've never seen the show, the writers and the artists. But because they're more like Buck Rogers adventures with under a Star Trek lens. But then DC had the license for a while, Marvel had the license for a while, and so there have been crossovers. I think there's an X-Men crossover. There is a Doctor Who crossover that's actually really fun. And then IDW has the license now. And they've been doing some really cool things, I think, especially leading up to and tying in with the films, that sort of thing. But this series isn't connected to anything. It's its own standalone miniseries, and I honestly think they were just trying to, make some fun Halloween merch and cash in on that, dime a little bit. And they came up with this story to get our heroes in fun costumes. If you haven't listened to the first episode of or the most recent episode, not our first episode, my God, that was a decade ago. Not really. I would suggest jumping back and listening to that so you can catch up with the plot so far and the plot as it is. Because we're going to jump in with issue 3 and then 4 of this mini series. The last time I went through all the creative, so I'm not going to do that again. I covered the writers and the artists then. So I will recap quickly what you've missed so far in the first 2 issues, if you haven't read them. The non-corporeal entity that feeds on fear, known as Rejek, or Jack the Ripper, as seen in the original series episode Wolf in the Fold, which I just rewatched, actually. And, I said that the premise was that they were worried Scotty hates women because a woman was the catalyst for some disaster. She just caused a little explosion or something that knocked him into a bulkhead. That's all of the description. He's knocked into a bulkhead, and then they're like really worried that now he resents women, all women. So they go to this planet to give him rest.
Look at Aaron. Aaron's like, wait, hold on.
Aaron's got
Hold on.
comments.
Hold on. I do not remember this episode. So they tried to cure misogyny with a vacation.
With basically, they go to like
Yes.
a strip club. They go to it's 60s television, so they're belly dancing.
Yeah. So famously, that makes you like and respect women again.
Obviously, right?
Yes, because those women have their own autonomy and choice to be there, to use what they have to get what they want.
Yeah. And not because they
Exactly.
have difficult relationships with their fathers.
Although
Well, that's a gross stereotype.
She does have a difficult relationship with her father.
Welcome to the podcast. No fact checking here.
Welcome to Hailing Frequencies Open.
Did I just like walk onto Twitter or something? What is going on here?
Okay, so in the comics, the Rejek has found himself on the Enterprise D in the holodeck. The crew, and he's taken over the ship. The crew has formed a plan to defeat him that involves several bridge officers using a MacGuffin that projects them into the holodeck as classic horror monsters. While they are the monsters, they have no sense of who they truly are. This way, they won't experience fear because monsters aren't afraid of monsters. That's the conceit. And they'll be able to battle him. So that's that. In issue 2, Counselor Troy and Commander Data end up at the end of the issue coming out of their various forms of fog and understanding who they are, and they lead our heroes off the holodeck, only to be stopped by a mob of crew members with pitchforks and torches because they look like monsters. I think that sums up the first 2 issues.
That covers it.
Yeah. So let's dive into number 3. Who wants to give a quick synopsis of that?
I'm looking at the pages. I figure I will. It's going to be quick.
Thank you.
So after all of that, they decide they've got to figure something else out. And we come back with Beverly and LaForge on seemingly, it looks like are they in like medical? Is that where they are? Where we find Beverly and Geordi?
Maybe it's sick bay. I don't know.
I don't even know. So they're there. They see the angry officers with their little pitchforks. We've got to do something. They don't know. We've got to get connection in there. And they're like, okay, fine. So then Beverly decides to do what everyone does when you want to keep folks away. Put out an all space-wide broadcast. Don't come here to the ship. We are infected. Stay away. And what's strange is that in one of the little squares, there's a cute little shuttlecraft going. Interesting. So that is something, we have to look out for that. On the other side, within the holodeck, we have our werewolf, our Cleopatra mummy, Data, Captain Picard, and Aquaman still running away from the pitchforks and the crew, trying to figure out how they can break out of the holodeck. Data does some dee-doo-doo-doo-doo on a board, plugging his head in to get the holodeck to not look like how Rajak wants it to. It comes back to its normal squares, and he has control, and he's changing it, and Rajak's kind of pissed about it. And so then they figure, we've got to get out. We've got to fight him. Rajak shows up. Wham, bam, there's a fight. There's a fog. They keep running. Buzz, buzz, buzz. They stun everybody. They jump out, and everyone is out in sickbay with Beverly. Yay. We've done it. Geordi says, I got to go down to engineering. Something's wrong. He leaves. Mind you, point of reference, they shut off all the turbo lifts and all of the things. There's no communication. There's no in. There's no out. But guess what? No transporter. Guess what? The transporter's working.
Dun, dun.
Who shows up? Our guy, Scotty. But he's the older Scotty. It's fun Scotty. Shows up. I'm here to help. Next thing you know, they're back around the table trying to figure out how they're going to fight Rajak. Scotty's like, I got it. We can do it. Go back in. Everybody goes back in. There's Rajak in a graveyard, ready to fight him again.
I just want to point out, there's not a plan, right? They're just like, let's go back in.
They're just going to go back in.
I just have to say, by this point in the story, I have completely lost track of what the hell is happening. Like, who knows what? Do they know who they are? Like, where in the holodeck? Where is this happening?
Good.
And then Scotty shows up.
And then Scotty shows up. And that's exactly how it was written on this page. Wham, bam, fight. We fight them. We're great. We got to find the other people. We do. Wham, bam, we fight, more and more. And then somehow they all get touched by Deanna, and she takes them out of their monster minds, brings them back to themselves, which was a very sweet moment. We'll get to that. So now they're all conspiring. What can we do to actually fight Rajak? They come back out, make a plan, go back in, and then guess what? Who's there? Our favorite villain of all times, with Rajak in the graveyard. Armus.
I follow him on
I think
Twitter,
Armus is your favorite villain because he is responsible
for one of the
That's
best deaths ever, and warranted.
Your long known hatred
I have
of
thoughts.
Tasha Yar.
I have thoughts.
Okay. Let's
And then
dive
that's just
in.
part 3.
That's
we
just
do
part
it? Sorry.
3.
So then we have to do part 4?
Mm-hmm.
Should we synopsize? That's not the word. Summarize would be the word.
I'm happy to
part
take
4?
a crack at this one.
Let's do it.
I'm going to be real brief. So it turns out that Armus isn't actually Armus. He's like, JK, I figured out that this is going to upset you. So it's really
we literally turn the page.
Armus.
He's Armus, you turn the page, and then he's not Armus.
And he's not Armus. Not Armus. Just there to scare the shit out of everyone. So we go on. He's doing his thing. It's very flamboyant. Armus is like shooting around like he's this way more movie than he was in the series, like just jumping around, shooting himself at people, tendrils going out everywhere, and they just kind of peel him off and run away, which is totally realistic.
Oh, yeah.
Scotty has thoughts about all of this, and they're all thinking, and they're like, we really have to do something about this because this could be bad. So after lots of talking, lots of feelings and emotions, Scotty's like, I have a plan. Somewhere in there, they decide they're going to destroy the ship. They're going to do self-destruct. And Picard is like, oh, I'm going to do it. And the other guy's like, no, you won't. And Picard goes, yes, I will. And he goes, no, you can't because I have control over the system. So that's not going to work. So that was very anticlimactic. So they lure Rajak out, and they like Troy's walking up to him with like the world's tiniest satellite dish, and she's like, we're gonna get you. And he's like, ha ha ha, no, you can't. You don't have a map of my like some other MacGuffin. You don't have like an internal map of who I am. You would need that. There's no way for you to have that. And then Scotty comes out and is like, they pulled it out of my brain. And with like, it literally says blip blip blip. She like zaps him and he dies. And the final panel is them having a trick or treat party with the kids on the ship.
Which is where Damien said it would have started had it been a actual episode of Star Trek.
And
Blip,
like, why
blip,
is
blip.
Picard in the room with children? Why is Picard in the room with children? We all know how Picard feels about children. That, inexplicably, is the least believable thing in this comic series. That he's at a children's Halloween party.
And I will second that.
I knew I liked you, Lenita.
Even though I'm a fan of Tasha Yar being obliterated from the series.
Listen, I'm not here to apologize for Tasha Yar. I just think that was a crappy way to kill off a main character.
This is a well-trodden path. We've had this debate.
Mark, they're going, I'm sorry, wait a minute, what?
I think we should rename this the Armus podcast.
Anybody want to switch seats? I mean, what's going on here?
So, Mark, I have to ask you, did you understand any of what happened in the comics? Like, this is pretty out there. It's a mini series. It's definitely like very self-contained, but it references characters and previous episodes and things that I feel like it really relies on the reader knowing a lot of that information coming into this. So how did you experience this story?
I will start by saying, I've read large chunks of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, and this was one of the hardest things I've ever had to read. This Star Trek thing, it was just very really out of context. Wasn't really getting a sense of who any of these people. I mean, like I know from osmosis who some of these people are, but I don't know the finer points of their character. So like in trying to like glean from these comics, who are these people? I'm like, and then like, I did understand like when Scotty showed up, I'm like, wait, he's not Next Generation. I know that. Like, what's this about? Like, but why? And then like, yeah, I know this is I think issue 2, but like Data loses his head, but then he's got it back, and I'm just like, I am so confused. Yeah, this was hard to follow. We could get into the nitty-gritty of it, but like, yeah, it was pretty out there. This was quite the gateway to Star Trek comics, I gotta say.
Oh no. Well, I think the first couple issues I thought were opening up the doors for a lot of questions that I thought we would get answers to, and then they just like walked away from those doors. I feel like things weren't really answered. It's unclear how Rejek is alerted to or whatever, how he gets the blood in the water to find out that they are interested in fear or whatever, to even come on board. So, and that wasn't explained. And the idea, the plan for how to fix the problem about them going into monster bodies and all that was like, okay, I get that. That's fine. But then they never came up with a new plan, really. Right?
They sort of stayed with the same plan, but a different way. It's like, we're still going to have our monster bodies, and we're going to figure out how to take over, or because we have data now, we are going to use data to help us try to break the holodeck so that we can then have it be reality, our reality, not Rajak's reality. But that doesn't work because he's all seeing, all knowing, all doing. He's got his little tentacle. He's got his tentacles in sort of everything. So that wasn't going to work anyway.
Right.
But I did kind of like the idea that, I mean, as far-fetched as it is, that like, you don't have a map of my brain. Like, I can understand, like, you don't understand the way that I work in order to get rid of me. Like, isn't that what all research is? Like, figuring out how like a disease actually functions and works, so that you can then figure out what thing you need to put to it to destroy it or stop it, i.e. cold and flu season, all of that business. So I know I'm like throwing it at the wall, but that's the way I thought of it.
I get it. It makes me think of those procedurals on CBS, all of those special interest SVU, whatever those. Every episode they have like some perpetrator, some villain that they are trying to understand his motive, and they're picking him apart and learning.
Oh, that's criminal intent.
That's criminal intent. But they're literally, it's in the title.
Yes, Vincent D'Onofrio is being very weird and like, he really likes to smell here, so that is the scent of. Yes, that's that.
What do they call him? He's the incept or something. Anyway, whatever.
The Kingpin? Sorry, wrong Vincent D'Onofrio.
That's the wrong series, baby.
All right, I'm on it.
Well, see, I feel like this to me was like kind of greatest hits in a lot of ways with all of these. This was like every existing Star Trek trope that we've seen, like all thrown into one stew. We got the like bodies in a bed being projected somewhere else. We got the alien possessing people's bodies. We got a headless Data. We got are we in the holodeck or have we left the holodeck?
Yeah.
We got
we have the ticking clock.
A ticking clock.
Yeah.
We got a ship somewhere else being like, oh, we're getting a message. What's going on over there? Let's go investigate, which never comes to fruition. I was like, or maybe it will. Is there a fifth one, or is this it?
This is
it.
Oh, good. Like that ship never comes anywhere.
No, that's the little ship that Scotty's on, right?
Oh, that's Scotty's ship?
Yeah.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Missed that completely.
Yeah. Well, they also assume that I mean, it's almost like Lower Decks where they like assume that you will get their little references, but they should have explained it a little bit better because that was a big plot point that Scotty shows up, you know. I I also, I mean, I know art is difficult, and some of these artists that worked on it are, you know, legit. But some of the like facial expressions are so intense, and I don't know if they were just really trying to show emotion, or maybe it's because I zoomed in on my screen on them. But I kept taking screen caps of them. And I think it's because these characters, I know these characters inside and out, and they wouldn't be acting like this, you know?
Correct.
I had issues with the art as a whole. And like, I mean, you know, like look, like I know, you know, it's an independent comic. It's different standards. I don't want to like, because I think like from a technical level, the art was fine, you know what I mean? But like I just felt that as a whole, you know, what are comic books are? It's sequential art storytelling, and I like there were large swaths of these issues where I just didn't feel the cadence and the sequencing of the art in doing anything effective. It was just kind of like, you know, here's a character talking, big blocks of text, and now here's here's a picture of another character talking, big blocks of text, here's a picture of another character, and then, you know, everyone runs around and starts, you know, kind of like fighting with each other, and then we're back to like, you know, everyone's standing in the room and talking to each other. And I was just like, and I think, you know, going back to your earlier question, like, did you have a hard time following it? I did, because I mean, from a outsider perspective, some of these concepts I was just like, wait, I'm not like, you know, you, Damon, you talked about the tropes were lost on me because I don't know the tropes. But I think part of it too is I had a hard time following, just because like I felt like there was just kinetic energy missing from the visuals and how these things were being laid out. And, you know, maybe inherently there is a good story here, or at least a story that's true to the essence of the spirit of the series or these characters or whatever. But it was just like, it was being missed on me because like I'm looking at this through the lens of trying to read, you know, a comic book as someone who reads a lot of comic books, and I'm like, I'm not following, like it's not leading me to where I think they want to try and lead me, because they're visually not leading me there. So that's just something I wanted to throw out there.
Now, my question would be, do we think that this is that maybe Star Trek doesn't lend itself to that kind of storytelling? Because I think we know that Star Trek can be very verbal.
Yes.
That there's a lot of talking,
a lot,
and that I think, whether we realize it or not, as people who have watched it for a long time, that we have developed like an ear for that. Right. And I think we covered this a little bit last time when we talked about it, that sometimes some of the sort of the MacGuffins or the techno babble, even for, you know, I think I have an ear, we all have some sort of ear from it from having watched Star Trek, but that that reading it the way that it was presented here doesn't translate the same way, or is harder to follow.
Also nonverbal cues, you can't get like when you say like the faces were drawn like super angry or like trying to show emotion, like I think a big part of Star Trek is being able to see that nonverbal communication from everyone. Like it's so interesting how even, we'll call him a day player, has been given, in their mind, they probably like, here's my backstory, here's what I'm doing. Like, yes, I'm just in 10 forward drinking this synth ale, but you're still like, oh, they're maybe hearing or having a different experience. Like at Quarks, Dabo, everyone yells. Like it's harder to do that in print. There is a lot of talking.
One of the things that I think makes Star Trek so compelling to watch is that at least when it's good, there's a lot put into the relationships between the characters. Like it's the characters and the character development that that I think in the best episodes, it's almost like the character development is served over any like small story that's happening. We're watching these relationships between people, the way they interact with one another, and like you're saying about the nonverbal communication, like the meaningful glances Riker throws at Picard or at Troy, the way Picard will look at someone if he's trying to communicate something without words. None of that comes through here. And I think also with comics, your panels are, and Mark, you can speak to this better than I can, but it's reduced to quips, to one-offs. It's like very, very short, concise language. And Star Trek, I mean, there are some scenes where you're communicating like that, where it's bam, 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 but we tend to be a little more loquacious. We tend to go off and we explain things. We get philosophical. And I think that at least the way this is set up, it just doesn't work.
We gather around the table and have a nice PowerPoint presentation. I mean, that's like a key part of, any problem
we have to
solving.
Go back to the conference room.
Correct.
And that wasn't so true in the original series, but in TNG, which it was very true.
Yes.
I mean, when I think back to, and again, I'm gauging this on the comics that I read and love, but it's the best stories in comics do the most with the least. Like I know it's a cheat. It's one of the greatest origins ever, but Amazing Fantasy, Spider-Man's origin, it's 11 pages, and you go on a whole journey over weeks with this character in 11 pages, and you don't feel like it's being rushed, because it's just the way the motion is captured, it just goes from one thing to the next. I think too, it's another Spider-Man reference, but there's the famous scene where Spider-Man is lifting the wreckage over his head, and it's 3 pages, and he goes on this entire hero's journey in 3 pages, to where he's like, all hope is lost, Aunt May is dead, everything is ruined, to lifting 10 tons of steel up over his head and pulling himself out of the wreckage. And like, I just never, high bar, I'm sorry, but in terms of just how it's captured, I just never get that sense of like we're moving the story in that direction. Like you said, it's kind of like it's very talky, it's very nuanced, it's very, we're looking for cues that maybe it's just not the right medium, but there's like some interesting inherent storytelling happening here, but it's not in synergy with the medium itself.
I want to find a good Star Trek comic and have you back on.
Sure.
Absolutely. I feel bad because I feel like the first two, honestly, I liked the first two. And maybe because they were trying to wrap it up, it's like these huge big battle scenes. Like, why is there so much pow curb? That's like in an episode, like there may be 2 sort of confrontations, right? If we think about an episode of Star Trek, unless it's like the Borg and then it's just all fighting, but it's not really, there just seemed to be so much. It's like, okay, we're going to go fight, and then we're going to come back, and then we're going to go fight, and then we're going to come back, and then we're going to go fight. It's like, what are we, what are we doing? And it was too much. It was too much, and a lot of running. And wait, I have a question though. Why was Deanna still in her mummy around the table when she came out? I was like,
who would want to lose that?
I was so confused.
I was so confused because I was like, aren't they like holodeck like the monsters are holodeck representations of their monster selves? Like, at no point did they actually leave,
put on makeup.
Yeah, no, there was no poop, we're putting on ears, like you're growing ears, or like you're gonna now have I don't know. It was, I don't know, maybe because she was sentient and so it morphed with her, so she didn't get to fully transition back.
Maybe
y'all's faces.
Stretching.
I know.
I think I missed something because I thought that they physically changed them, like they put them in costumes, and that they did something to their brain and they physically put them in there. Because then there was that panel where they were sitting in chairs and they kept saying we have to bring them to the holodeck. So I thought they were physically in there, because then they physically run out. Did I?
They never.
I missed.
I think they physically run out the way that Ship in the Bottle Moriarty runs out.
Son of a bitch.
Yes. Son of a bitch.
Exactly. Yep.
God damn it.
God damn.
It's a good question. I'm going back actually to the one where they first go into the holodeck, issue
Yeah, that's
2.
what I'm doing too.
And yeah, they're in they're in med beds in uniform with those that little thing on their forehead that they always do. I mean, it is
got
the
little
trope.
doobie-doops. Yes.
The little
so-
boopy doops. What did you
Yeah.
call
the
it?
little
Yep, you just put it on and you just press a little button and your consciousness goes.
See, I thought that the scene with them in the beds was them doing like the implantation and then they brought them. So that's what I was confused about.
Oh.
I thought that they
I-
were like programming and then bringing them there.
No, I thought
Maybe
that
you're
it was
right.
I thought it was putting the little nubs on and then you go into a sleep and you press the button and you are transported in, but your physical body is still in the bed, a la the cell.
I think Aaron
Aaron's
might
right?
be right because
Okay.
whenever they show the doctor and like Barkley and they're not in the beds in the background, they're just looking at panels and stuff. I feel like they would show them, like she would be like waving a tricorder over them in the med bed.
Okay. So
Yeah,
they're actually in there.
I got the
Okay.
sense that they were physically in there, but
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mike Jones.
I think
What you
you're
got?
right because
No.
then they're sitting in the chairs in the costume, and then they're like, okay, let's go, and it shows them like standing up, I think, and going to.
But hold on, if you go to comic 3, I know this is funny. Comic 3 after they zap everyone 1, 2, 3, like page 7 or so, they zap everybody in the corridor, and then they're all in sick bay, getting treated. They're laying in beds behind
they are
Worf and Picard and Riker.
Get out of school.
Yeah, but they're laying down in their costumes like they're being treated after coming out. And there's Troy and her like weird, like, do we know what she is? She's some sort of like Egyptian,
she's
like
mummy. She's like a Nefertiti mummy.
Just a mummy. Okay.
I think it's like the mummy, the Wolfman, the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
So what I totally missed from this whole episode, let's call it, is the actual Halloween party kind of sucked because I think I've said this before. I am an advocate for the like ambient Next Generation episodes where like there actually isn't really an adventure, where like they play poker and Riker plays the trombone and Data learns to tap dance.
They have a pen
Beverly
pal.
puts on a play.
I'm into that. Yes. That sounds like fun. You never showed me those episodes, Aaron.
Those are great. Those are great episodes.
Those are good episodes.
We're just like, people are just like having hobbies while they're like, on a space trip, which, I felt like that Halloween party, if they had an Enterprise Halloween party, would have been more entertaining.
They have replicators. They could have any costume.
Any costume, and they've still got cheap. Like there's a ghost that is a bed sheet with holes in it.
Like does someone have like one of like the
maybe
plastic
they decided
with, like, the air holes in it. Or...
But here's the thing: they decided to do actual like Earth traditions. Make your costume.
But here's something else that's interesting. Why is Riker talking to kids and laughing and not flirting with some woman? Because let's be real, Riker doesn't go to a party unless there's alcohol and women.
And preferably a trombone.
And a trombone. Preferably. Got to play the bone.
So, but Mark, you raised an interesting question: is what episodes does Aaron show you?
Oh,
I mean, it's been.
I'll
a
have
minute
it on
since,
in the background.
I would say it's been a minute since we sat down and watched a Star Trek thing together.
Do you like retreat to your corners and watch your like different franchises?
She watches on her phone, I think. Yeah, right? It's usually your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll watch on my phone, and then sometimes if you're busy doing something else, I'll watch it on the big TV. But then when you come in, you'll start talking to me about something, so I just pause it. And I'm like,
turn it off.
Either you
must not
or
know
you
my
or our
hobby.
son. I was spending Sundays. So like I'm trying to binge Lower Decks because I'm still my shame is that I'm like just finishing season 2 right now. Like I have a
That's
lot of
okay.
catching up to do. I know.
But that's not
Damien, I
shame. That
know.
means you
That's-
have
Okay.
like so much
Oh,
deliciousness
Yeah.
ahead of you.
So much
jealous.
That is
great things.
new.
I
I'm
know,
jealous.
exactly.
Yes.
But I was sitting there trying to watch it, and like my son decided to come in and spend like 2 hours trying to get me to do other stuff. And I'm like, it's Sunday night. Mama's brain doesn't work. Mama turned on cartoons for herself. You gotta leave me alone.
That's awesome.
Here's my question. So if you were a comic book writer, and they came to you and said, let's do a Halloween Star Trek miniseries, what would you do? This I don't think was the right answer.
No. I think it would have been hilarious if there was some sort of transporter mishap and you had like a Freaky Friday thing.
Okay.
I think that could have been fun. Like Picard play into Picard's hatred of children. Picard and a kid or something like that. But there's like something going on where Picard has to do something big and important, or it'll cause some sort of intergalactic incident because some culture will be offended. So you're
Right.
trying to get some kid who's in the captain's body to do something, and then Picard to do. I mean, kind of like I think like what they did with Star Trek with Spock and his fiance.
Yeah, I
On
was just thinking
Oh,
that.
yeah.
That's very similar
yeah,
to the
like something like
Strange New
that.
Worlds episode.
Yeah, but just take it and make it more ridiculous.
I was gonna say
Okay.
you hit on something good there because I was gonna say like again outsider point of view, but like I wanted this to be more fun.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there were aspects of this story where they were like trying to create these high stakes, and I'm like, it's very hard to think of it as high stakes when it's, you know, Star Trek characters looking like werewolves and Egyptian mummy things, you know, and like again, there was like just a tonal dissonance to that. And I think like if you just like take a premise and just lean all the way into the absurdity, it can, I think, kind of stand apart. As like, yeah, we're I mean, again, maybe this is like just too like outside the realm of what is acceptable to Star Trek fans. I'm not trying to like, you know, just like, oh, what if we just do everything different from what you like, you know, like, but like at the same time, it's like I would have loved to see it just be more absurd, because I even texted Aaron at one point earlier today as I'm reading this. I'm like, is it trying to be a parody? Because I don't think it is, and I kind of would almost like the parody here, not to poke, not to make fun of the characters, but just to kind of be in on the joke, I guess, like, because it just seems like a silly premise from the start. You're doing Halloween content for Star Trek. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think, and I just thought of this. I think it's a trope that tropes that they've done many times before. But it would have been interesting to really lean into the either the I mean, I'm a big fan of like the Universal monsters from the 30s and 40s, but like almost like a Bride of Chaotica or a Iron Man Bashir, or, you know, one of those episodes where they're for some reason trapped in the holodeck and there's a real villain and they have to, in this black and white world, you know, solve a problem by playing the characters, you know what I mean? And it's kind of what they did, but like they didn't
There's no
like
irony, no sense of humor about it.
yeah.
They
I mean,
go just lean in, you know,
lean
like,
in, make it funny. Like I think it would have been better if it had been funny. If they were in Abbott and Costello meet, you know, Frankenstein, you know what I mean? Like that level of spoof almost. But instead, I think they tried to make it actually high stakes is the right word. I almost said actually scary, but I don't know if that was really the goal. But it didn't. I don't think that it followed. It didn't. It couldn't cash the check that it wrote.
See, I would do like a fully low stakes Halloween episode. Like, I would start with a flashback and they have a Halloween party and like Data has a horrible, offensive Halloween costume that is like a faux pas that he doesn't get it. And then it's the next year's Halloween and he wants to like correct the record and it's like his quest to like find a new Halloween costume. He goes to each of his friends to ask their advice.
Oh, that's good.
Oh yeah.
That's good.
Like
Because that's very Data. Like
That
that's
is very
very like, so what do you think of this joke? What do you think of this costume?
That could even
maybe
be
there's
like
like
a
a
clip
lightly
episode.
threatening entity that sort of like, is hurtling the ship towards danger while Data's
Or
searching
do
for
we
a
even
Halloween
need
costume.
that? Yeah, like maybe we don't even need a bad guy. Like maybe it is about
It's about Data's journey of self-discovery.
right.
Finding
Which
a
is
Halloween
basically
costume.
entire series. Yeah.
I would read that. I'm sorry. I would read
Absolutely.
Yeah. See, I still, in my mind, I'm going back to the Freaky Friday concept, and I see a panel where it's Captain Picard trapped in like a little kid's body going up to a replicator being like, tea, Earl Grey, hot. And either he can't reach it or the machine won't make it for him because of child safety restrictions. And it's like giving him a sippy cup of
Adult
apple
beverage.
juice instead.
Would
And just like Picard's like
die.
little child rage at that would be so entertaining.
That's
like
brilliant.
Rascals, where he
Yeah.
he is a kid.
Mhm.
I believe you're in my chair.
Right? So
They
they
tried,
tried.
y'all. They tried.
They just didn't stick the landing, I think.
No, I'm telling you, I was in like the first two. I was like, okay, I can get down with this, even though it's like, okay, where did Rayjet come from? I told you he was on that planet that they were near.
Yeah.
And because he's a fear-seeking entity, he always has his little antennae out for like, who's afraid? Where is their fear? And it was just an overload, and then the Cosmo said, "Bing bang," and then he was on the ship. And then the rest of it.
And that's what happened.
So I think maybe we lost our IDW comic sponsorship this week.
Oh.
That's
this is
sad.
unfortunate because this episode is brought to you by
No, but my question is
BJ's Wholesale Club and IDW Comics.
Get your IDW comics at BJ's.
I have a very basic understanding of the comic. I know what DC is. I know what Marvel is. What is IDW? I don't know what that is.
It's considered an independent label, but they have a couple of like very high profile licenses. Like they have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and like it's a lot of like properties, but I guess it's considered independent because the print run isn't as large, and the a lot of like the quote unquote top creators are usually signed with the big two. So, Marvel, DC. So like, it's more not entry level, but, kind of people either, like at the start of their careers or maybe like had their careers and they're trying to get one more run at it doing these kinds of stories. And so they're working with kind of, popular IPs in a smaller environment in terms of print runs. So.
Mark, is IDW creator owned or no?
No, I don't think it's creator owned because I don't think they do a lot of original content. A lot of it is like I think
this.
Yeah, I said they're not Buffy because that's Dark Horse, but I'm trying to think like some of the other properties. It's a lot of like established properties just from like both pop culture or maybe like people who've jumped around from like Conan. I think Conan the Barbarian might be IDW. Like he's been Marvel, he's been Dark Horse, he's been all over the place. So
yeah, I just quickly looked up. It's like Mars Attacks, Castlevania, Transformers, G.I. Joe, My Little Pony.
Sonic.
So some like recognizable names, but
a lot of these names they have their bigger representation in other media.
Correct.
Not as this is not like Star Trek comic books are not even like secondary. It's like tertiary, right? Because I feel like the novels have a bigger audience than these would have.
Absolutely.
And I feel like Star Trek does better in like a fiction novel format.
It lends itself to novels more because you can it's all about the words, and you can get into the characters that are monologue in a way, and those scenes around the conference room table are easy to play out in a novel form. It almost, taking Star Trek into the comic book world reminds me of when they try to make Star Trek into action movies, and it doesn't quite feel like Star Trek anymore.
Because it's not.
Yeah, because it's, I mean, like Star Trek Into Darkness, like it just didn't feel right.
No, because
with Spider-Man's Chris Pine.
With Spider-Man's Chris Pine.
Sorry.
Very good.
Oh my god.
I have a question for you, Mark. So I didn't know you were like Spider-Man, like
super nerd.
Yeah. Oh, listen, I love it. Be super nerdy about anything. Do you like the new? I mean, do you just read comics, or do you watch like the movies? It's like, are you in Spider-Man? Like,
I'm pretty in. I don't. I think the one big blind spot for me in terms of the spectrum of Spider-Man stuff is like some of the animated stuff. Like I'm into.
That was
going
to be my question. I just want to know how you felt about, like, because I literally just late to the party. When you have a tiny human, you don't get to go to the movie.
No, I mean,
I just watched Into the Spider-Verse.
Well, those I'm into, but like I'm talking about like in the 90s, like there were a lot of like animated series and stuff like that. And like there are some people like they're like really into that, and I'm like, I watched a little of it. I was like late in high school, so I wasn't really watching Saturday morning cartoons at that point. So, but
fair enough.
The Into the Spider-Verse movies are brilliant because it's just it's comic book brought to the big screen. That's what they do with it. It's phenomenal. Like it's like one of my favorite things that they've done with anything for the most part. So
no, that's awesome, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch this. And then I watched it. I was like, this is fucking amazing.
So good.
I haven't watched the next one, but I was like, the first one, I was like, this is
I haven't either.
Like, I'm in. Like in like, I just love the concept of it. I loved it all. And I was like, and then you're like, oh yeah, I've got the very first Spider-Man ever made. So I'm like, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe it's trash.
So there's a certain podcast host who always likes to ask guests their meet cute with Star Trek. I'm just gonna step in and ask Mike's question for him. But how did you get into Spider-Man, and why Spider-Man?
It
big
goes
question.
It goes all. So when I was really little, I got, like, this is the story. I would get $1 every week, and after church, there was a candy store across the street from the church that I would go with my dad. We'd go to Saturday night mass, and my mom would give me $1, and I could get whatever I wanted with it. And there was one time, it was my brother and I, and he bought an issue of Amazing Spider-Man for 75 cents, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do that too. I was like 6, 7 years old at that point, and open the comic up, and the first panel is Spider-Man like huddled in the rain and the cold because he had ran out of web fluid. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, wow, this is like the hero in his own book, and he's like such a loser. This is me. I love this. like I was instantly drawn to like this everyman character who just couldn't get a good break. And like, I don't want to say like I bought every issue ever since then, but like I would, with that $1 that I would get, I would seek out that comic book series because I just fell in love with that character, and someone that, had all the power, but like, just didn't always have things break his way. And it just kind of grew from there. So
that's awesome. That's so, and here's what's interesting. I love the fact that it was like your big brother being like, I'm going to buy one of these. And you'd be like, oh, that seems cool. Like, and I wonder if he would have chosen something else. No, but seriously,
would my son be able to go to college?
Yes. Would Spider-Man have found his way to you another way? You know what I mean? Like, there are certain things that are supposed to be in our lives. And I wonder if that origin story would have been somewhere else down your line, because you are like in, which is no, it's awesome. That is seriously not, that's like, that is so cool.
See, Aaron, it's awesome.
I know, Aaron. Listen, we'll commiserate when he's not here about the other side of it, but it is awesome.
Aaron, do you find that his depth of nerddom drives you deeper into your own separate nerddoms?
It makes me feel more okay about it. Like I have no issue letting him see me nerd out about Star Trek or Doctor Who or something like that, just because his thing is like, yeah, you're a sci-fi nerd. I'm a comic book nerd. Like, we could go to Comic-Con together and both find exactly what we want. And he's like, I'm not dressing up. And I'm there like, I will dress up. But I do think ultimately his love of Spider-Man worked out, because I think it gave him a thing for redheads. So I was able.
Aaron is winning,
which means I caught his eye.
That laugh early.
How do you feel about Beverly Crusher?
That is amazing.
Beverly Crusher did win the Doctor bracket.
That's true.
He is awesome.
You could rock some Bev Crusher cosplay.
I could do, yeah. All I need is like that sort of like turquoise teal like lab coat.
Right.
Oh no, wait, no. Yeah, her coat matches her uniform, right?
Yes, it does.
I was like, I didn't just make that up, right?
No,
you didn't.
No.
Nope. You're remembering correctly.
Thank you. And I just walk around with an iPad.
Right.
Yep. Literally all the
iPad
props.
Mini, just a little iPad Mini, and you're good to go.
And you're good to go. Exactly. So we're going to Comic-Con next year, and that's great. So hopefully next year they'll do another Star Trek Halloween miniseries and take our advice, because I'm sure they're listening.
Absolutely.
And do something that has more of a through line and makes a little more sense. It doesn't take itself so seriously. I think ultimately that's the problem, is that the idea of having the characters dress up in these cool costumes is fun, but then the comic wasn't fun.
Also, wasn't there an image that we saw like on one of the like previews for that with Captain Picard and Beverly Crusher as the Phantom of the Opera and Christine?
Yes.
Did we not see that?
Again,
that is what Mike Jones said.
Right. That never happened. That was just a variant cover. Mark, explain variant covers to me, because sometimes they write a check that they can't.
Mark, please defend these comics.
Variant covers are just incentives for comic book retailers to order extra copies, because it's like, if you order it's like they do like for every 5 issues of a normal cover, you'll get 1 variant, and then they can upsell it at the comic book store. So that's all variants are. They have nothing to do with the story. They have nothing. It's like they're just pure gimmicks to get retailers to order lots of comics.
But sometimes
I didn't realize that's how it works.
It'll be like a really famous artist, because the person who does the cover of the variant is usually not the artist who does the book, like the rest of the book.
Oh yeah.
So they do something. So they do something really special, which makes people willing to pay more for that variant cover, because there are fewer of them, and there's something about the cover art that's very cool.
Correct. Yes.
So like you could do the art for an entire comic book, and like some other big shot comes in and does the cover.
Yes.
Rough.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a rough world.
It's rough being an independent contractor, man.
It's cutthroat.
I there for a while I was really into Batman comics. And the ones in the 50s and 60s, the covers hardly ever had anything to do with the story. They were very big, exaggerated, Batman and Robin popping out of Jack in the Box.
Like here's Batman and Superman playing baseball.
Right, exactly. And it's like, that doesn't happen in the story. That's hilarious. But yeah, so this is the plan. We're gonna find the best Star Trek comic book. I'm sure there are people on the internet with an opinion about this.
Yeah.
And and we are all gonna read it. And Mark's gonna come back, and we're gonna restore his faith that Star Trek can be in a comic book.
I would love to track down some of the Marvel books because I'd be curious, like who actually worked. I know nothing about these, so I'd be curious to know who worked on them. I mean, maybe I could pull some strings, get them on the show. You know what I mean? If there's a Spidey connection, like you never know. Oh, there we go. There it is. Just took about an hour.
I think we definitely need to have
with the guy.
open.
He's friends with the guy who killed Gwen Stacy. It's cool.
We legally have to say that was a fictional character, not a person.
And I just want to reiterate that I am friends with a number of Star Trek OnlyFans creators, and we will get them on. So other people know people too.
All right.
Yeah, well, that's the question I didn't ask earlier when we were asking about your interest in Spider-Man and the various forms that you've covered and gotten into. Have you delved into the plethora of thirst trap Instagram accounts of just twink boys in Lycra Spider-Man costumes? It is a whole thing.
I honestly have not. I gotta tell you. But
did you know that was a thing?
No, I mean, I did not know. No,
the algorithm treats us all very differently.
Do you spend doing research, Mark? I'm cool with it. It's cool.
I have some links I can send to the group.
Holy crap, Aaron. Todd DeFalco did an issue of Star Trek Marvel.
No.
Yeah, Todd DeFalco did the name drop. He did the intro to my book. He did the forward. So me and Tom.
Oh my God. So we need to read his stuff. Get him on.
We'll get him on.
Tom DeFalco's legit. I mean, he's fantastic. He's very, very talented. And he did Star Trek. So there's our connection.
There you go.
Who knew the first interview we would have would be the person who wrote like 3 Star Trek comics for Marvel.
Jan DeMatteis is another one too.
Really?
Yeah. I'm like looking at this now. It's called Star Trek Memory Alpha from 1980 to 82.
Wow, they needed a paycheck.
Yeah. So there you go. We got it. We got it.
Yeah. Awesome.
We did it. Do you have that through Marvel Unlimited? Will that be in the app?
No, I don't think they got the license, but we'll legally obtain those comics.
Yeah, we can find them.
100%.
Totally legal, totally cool.
Above reproach.
That's amazing. All right, well, I think that we've covered this pretty extensively, and now I'm excited about this episode that we're going to do. So before we go, I just want to thank Mark for being here and taking time out of his busy life reading Spider-Man comic books to join us. And your time reading these kind of terrible comics. I don't want to say terrible.
No.
They're terrible. They were just
their own thing. Yeah.
Exactly. There was potential.
We should also thank Erin for giving up her normal podcasting location.
That's true. She's been relegated to the living room, I think.
Because, I mean, somehow, I don't know how that happened, because I'd be like, this is my spot. You can go upstairs. Yes, you lost rock, paper, scissors.
We're all seeing more and more of each other's houses.
It's true.
Exactly.
It's true.
I'm in a different place every time. Like, that's just what it is.
Yeah. So when I record in our guest room / office, and so whenever there's a guest, I'm suddenly somewhere else. And we had a guest all summer. So, all right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you have enjoyed today's episode, make sure you leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast, and shoot us a message on Twitter or X or Facebook or Instagram. We are at Hailing Freak Open. You can find us at hailingfrequenciesopen.com. And with that, I will say thank you again to everyone, and Hailing Frequencies closed.
No goodbyes. Just good memories. Hailing Frequencies closed, sir.